Hey, this is Matty Trouville from the Houston Sabercats, and you're watching Rugby Wrap Up.
Coming up next on Rugby Wrap Up, Bryan, Ray, and Matt McCarthy with all things Major League Rugby.
Rugby Wrap Up brought to you in part by the Balanced Palate, nutrition for peak performance, and the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street, the world's best rugby pub.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Rugby Wrap Up. Matt McCarthy at our satellite studio, the world's greatest rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street here in Midtown Manhattan. And on the horn with us once again from Halifax, Nova Scotia is Mr. Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News. Bryan, welcome back.
Great to be back, Matt. Happy to say Halifax is now the center of the rugby universe. It's been a crazy few days, but yeah, always make time for the Rugby Wrap Up.
Bryan, every time I talk to you, Nova Scotia either has rugby or they don't have rugby. Is this going to be another Canadian South Park episode?
I wish it was. It'd be a whole lot more entertaining. 1 minute it's on, 1 minute it's off. I actually referee high school. Well, I referee all levels of rugby around here, and so it would be nice to know if I got to go in and do games or not. Apparently it's a go, so we'll see what happens. But it's certainly been a trying few days and a bit of a ridiculous situation.
All right, well, I fully credit you for having it reinstated because your tweets about the problem were retweeted by a whole bunch of people, including us at Rugby Wrap Up, and then there were people retweeting their outrage along with it. So kudos to you.
Well, I'm just a man of the people, really, just spreading the news. If I had any role whatsoever in helping, great. But I certainly don't take any credit. But here we are. We'll see how it goes, and hopefully the sanity will prevail and we will move forward.
Good stuff. Let's talk rugby in both our respective countries, though. Let's talk Major League Rugby. Big weekend in the books, another one looming, playoff ramifications of plenty, and you had the first match that we're going to look at was NOLA versus Austin in New Orleans, but it was Austin's home game.
It was originally supposed to be played in Houston, and it was a deal made because the international that was scheduled for Houston, because their field wasn't ready, got sent to Austin. So Austin said, okay, we'll trade you a Major League Rugby game. Well, of course, Houston's field still wasn't ready, so they couldn't do it then. They couldn't book a field in Austin, so they ended up giving it back to NOLA. So both of those Austin NOLA games were effectively home games for NOLA. No surprise really in this one. NOLA gets the win. 26-14 was the score. NOLA scored within like 1 minute. Eric Howard, the captain, ran through for a try. Then it was 12-7 at the half. A pretty amazing individual score from Dom Bailey just before the half kind of got Austin back into it. 2 quick tries early second half, and that was all she wrote. Pretty quiet from then on.
2 things I take away from that match. First off, right out of the gate, you named your fellow Canadian Eric Howard of the NOLA Gold. And second, you mentioned Dom Bailey, who we love. And 2 things about Dom Bailey. Number one, it looked like he was in like a video game cluster before he actually got like an energy boost and then burst past everybody. That was an incredible try. And the second thing we like about him is that we can mention the Davenport, Chicago Lions, and Kansas City rugby entities because he played with and is from there respectively. We love social media followings.
Yeah, that's right. Dom's kind of been in and out of the starting side this year. Really dynamic flanker. We've seen him with Davenport before and with the Chicago Lions just before he joined up with Austin. He just took a short pass, a little offload from Silva, their fly half, and kind of fended off one and then just stepped on the accelerator. He was gone from 60 meters, swerved around JP Eloff. We haven't really seen any of that this year. So that was a pretty impressive finish from him. Gave him a little boost, but those individual efforts just weren't enough for Austin as a team. They're just not on the level of NOLA as far as cohesion goes.
And your other fellow Canadian, Kyle Bailey, went out early with an ankle injury, unfortunately. We'll keep an eye on that. But his replacement, Billy Stewart, did score a try. And he did so in an attempt at like Chris Ashton meets Dylan Takaido-Simpson with the dive. But it was not quite there. He needs a little bit of work.
Yeah, Bailey went off, Kyle Bailey that is, went off with an ankle injury early, about 10, 11 minutes, and doesn't look too serious, so hopefully he'll be back soon. But Billy Stewart, he's a local guy down in New Orleans, big second row. He's put on a lot of weight this year. Really, he's turned some heads. He's put in some good shifts, scored a nice try, just broke a tackle, ran away from about the 22. Yeah, his best Ash Splash impression. I won't give him too many style points for that one, but I thought he had a good game out there. Well done for the young fella.
Yes, kudos to Mr. Stewart and NOLA Nate Osborne and co. for giving the local product a chance and the local product taking full advantage of it. But we can segue with the dive thing into the match in Rugby Town, USA between the Utah Warriors and the Glendale Raptors, because DTS Dylan Takaido-Simpson actually scored one of those kinds of tries along with everybody else in the building, I think, including Barry Herbert and Angus Peacock of Rugby Colorado and Linda Cassidy and Mayor Mike. I think they all crossed the whitewash in this one. Yeah,
I think last week, most of us picked Glendale to win, but I think we all thought it would be a little bit closer than it was. And in 10-0 Utah a few minutes into the game, so they certainly had something going for them, and then it just completely fell apart. I don't know, maybe Glendale just woke up or something, but that was the best game we've seen the Raptors play in a little while. 31-10 by the break. Takaido-Simpson definitely running rampant out there, but really it was the midfield. Robbie Petzer set a new Major League Rugby record with 34 points, 3 tries, 8 from 9, kicking, I think, from the 9 from 10, kicking from the tee. He missed the last one with like 2 minutes to go in the game. Otherwise, almost inch perfect. Chad London, 2 tries. The two of them in the midfield, just really impressive, and a great performance from Glendale and what they needed to keep them in the playoff hunt.
Yeah, the good citizens of Glendale, Colorado, Rugby Town, USA have a lot to be excited about. Their team is getting healthy. They're getting their depth back. They seem to be peaking at the right time. You've got Petzer with the 34 points. He's got Chad London with him. He's got Ryberg and Wheeler. You got DTS giving defenses fits, making them go batty at fullback. Luke White, the pack, they are in good form right now.
Yeah, looking at their troubles earlier this year, a lot of it came from the set piece. The scrum was a little bit better in this one, but they lost Marco Fepo-Leai, their Kiwi tight head, about 3 minutes into the game. Kalepi Fifita stepped in. He did all right. They're working on the scrum. They know that's an area, but the rest of the game looked sharp for once. Sean Davies did really well. They started Atta Malifa again and fly half. Will McGee came on early in the second half, but it didn't matter. They were just firing on all cylinders. Ryberg's unstoppable. Mika Kruse on the bench. I mean, there's an ultra-talented kid. To have that kind of impact coming in off the bench is pretty useful. So certainly, I mean, these are the finalists after all. They shouldn't be taken lightly. They're looking pretty good at the right time in the season. It's just, can they get in the playoffs is the question.
I think they're answering that question on the pitch right now, but what's even more impressive is that the Warriors actually went up 10-0 before the Raptors rattled off 31 unanswered points before halftime. Just unbelievable. And I got to give a shout out, as much as it pains me, to Dallen Stanford for his Hans Solo call on DTS's one-handed snatch of the ball, facilitating the try. Great play, good call, Dallen.
DTS, that is ridiculous! And they'll streak through! Han Solo!
Yeah, that was a spectacular effort. I mean, we've seen DTS doing freakish stuff like that all season. He's really been a thrilling guy to watch. That pickup, just one-handed right off his bootlaces, finishes it, the simple 2-on-1 to Davies for the score. Sensational team. That was right off the kickoff for the second half. So, I mean, that was just right back to business for Glendale. And, yeah, you do have to give Utah a little bit of credit. Not just for starting the game well, but they stuck in the game. I mean, they were getting thrashed, but they never gave up. Gannon Moor got a nice breakaway try at one point. Matt Jensen late in the game scored, so they didn't completely wave the white flag. They were just outmatched and outgunned by a really impressive Raptors unit.
Hey, these players are playing for their jobs. They're not club players. They're not college players. They're playing for their livelihood, and they're playing hard for the most part all 80 minutes or whenever they're in. And speaking of playing hard, your Toronto Arrows, who don't have the most favorable of schedules right now, are at least at home. And although they didn't go 8-0, as many of you predicted once they were home they'd go 8-0, you, sir, have gone 8-0 in the last 2 weeks. So maybe if the Arrows emulate Bryan Ray's perfection in the remainder of this season, they'll go into the postseason.
Yeah, well, I was, bragging with Tony Riddell online earlier this year that I thought they would go about 7-1 at home. So far, so good. I'm going to stick to the Arrows from here on out. This was the game of the week. I think we all knew this was going to be the big one to watch. It delivered. It was intense the whole time. Big hits. I think last week maybe I jumped the gun saying we were looking at playoff rugby. In that, I just meant the pressure was on. But this one was a really a good match, really hard. San Diego's discipline really let them down. 3 yellow cards, gave up a lot of silly penalties. They'll be hurting themselves, beating themselves up over that this week. In a late try, it was back and forth. Toronto scores to get back in the game. San Diego, Toronto makes a huge mistake. They kicked the ball straight down the pipe to Mike Teo. They countered and they eventually scored off that. But then Toronto, they didn't give up. They came right back. They got the last-minute try from Stephen Ng, and then they just killed the clock in the last few seconds. So huge win for Toronto.
Yeah, and I picked San Diego, and that's a blemish on my record. But I picked San Diego for the record because I thought Lou Stanfield was going to be in the mix. He wasn't. He's a big component of that team. 3 yellow cards. Took a lot for them to lose that match, but kudos to Toronto. I was on my way to the Rooney match and on the subway and trying to follow that match, but it kept cutting out on ESPN Plus. So I was watching your tweets and living through you having a heart attack through tweets. And every time I got to a subway stop, I had to recharge and find out what was going on. So I'm having a heart attack because you're having a heart attack.
Yeah, normally I'm pretty active on there, tweeting out kind of as the game goes on, but I was too engrossed in this one. I had a lot riding on this playoffs, but also my reputation, right? It was a tense match, really nervous ending, and you could feel the intensity with every play. Good crowd. The original report that came out was about just over 2,200, but we've talked to them. They actually forgot to count all the people in the VIP tents and the beer tents, so it was closer to 3,000 in attendance. So a good show for them. But I think you're right. San Diego did miss Lou Stanfield out there. He's such a physical force out there. They've got Vera Malua, the Fijian, a converted winger. He's really athletic, but that when you get in those trenches, that's where you need a big guy like Sweet Lou to hand out the big shoulders, and he just wasn't there. They did miss his physicality out there. All
right. Before we break, let's get to that other match, the last match. Sunday, 5 p.m., Rugby United New York in Coney Island, hosting the Houston SaberCats, who are coming off a tough week. Miserable day in New York City. It was Cinco de Mayo. It may have been Cinco de Diciembre because it was freezing cold. I thought it was Halifax, right, which you're used to in late November. Yet despite it being a miserable day in New York City, a spirited gaggle of good-natured fans showed up, cheered on the team, and Rooney did what they needed to do. Houston showed up in yellow uniforms, which were pretty awful, but they came to play. And the Houston SaberCats are a tough team. They just didn't score any points. But the locals didn't disappoint. They're getting healthy. They should be in good shape for the playoffs. I did catch up with the SaberCats' new head coach, Paul the Cactus Emmerich of USA Rugby lore, and the Butcher, Dylan Fawcett of Rugby United New York. We don't have time for that in this segment, so it'll stand alone. And it is the actual first interview post-match that Paul Emmerich has done as a head coach for the SaberCats.
Yeah, Houston just has too much talent in that team to be doing, for the record that they've got. Paul Emmerich's an experienced guy. Obviously, he's played with the Eagles. He's been around. So, are they going to keep him on long term? Maybe it's a thing where they keep him as kind of a head coach and they bring in a more experienced director of rugby kind of to oversee everything. We see that a lot in Europe. But certainly, it's not all doom and gloom for Houston fans. They're not going to make the playoffs this year, but they've got a fantastic new facility that will be, all guns blazing by next year. They'll probably have some new bodies in there as well. So there's still stuff to look forward to. I wouldn't be too upset, beyond where they are already.
All right, and on that note, let's take a quick break, but we'll be back with more Major League Rugby talk, including predictions and some more opinion with Mr. Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News right after this.
Been blind since I was 4, and I've never seen a beer commercial or a beer label. None of that stuff influences me. I drink beer because of the taste. And my beer's Pabst Blue Ribbon. It has the taste and the flavor.
What do you think's on the label?
I think there's a naked woman riding on a unicorn, jumping over fire. Oh, that's good beer.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
Hey, I'm Matt from Trouville, and this is Rugby Wrap Up.
And we are back, Matt McCarthy and Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News talking Major League Rugby. Bryan, let's get to the Toronto Arrows doing that old 3 matches in 1 week.
That's right. It's the trifecta this week. We've got Sunday San Diego, Thursday Austin, Sunday again against Utah. So a big week for the Arrows. Pretty trying. It's going to test their depth for sure. But I mean, you'd have to think Austin haven't won a game yet this year, so no reason to pick against Toronto, right? And hey, that's the Toronto Arrows. That's kind of who I've been going with, so I'm going to be backing them, even with a bit of a reserve side. I'd expect probably 10 to 12 changes from their team from the San Diego game. That's
just crazy. It's a big ask of these players. They might need bodies. Are you bringing your cleats?
Well, it's been a little while, but I could dust off the boots. I like to think I wouldn't embarrass myself out there for about 2 minutes anyways.
Embarrassing ourselves is part of the job description if you want to be a rugby pundit. It's an important component and a necessary component in this space.
I guess it does kind of comes with the territory. You got to live and learn every day, but I try to keep my head out of the weeds too much.
Look, we're not going down that rabbit hole of Canadian weed or weeds. We're not going to do it. We're going to stick to the script. We're going to stay with the predictions. And for me, it's going to be a continued agony for the Austin Elite fans. Their team is going to stay on that season-long schneid with no wins. This one doesn't get any easier. I think the Arrows are going to take this one going away.
Yeah, I expect they'll do that. Just to note, this game is going to go back to York, that dodgy pitch up at York University, just because of the rescheduled. Remember, this one was rescheduled. It was originally meant to be played a few weeks ago, and Austin got stranded somewhere because of horrible weather in Texas, so they had to move it, but they couldn't get it at the new stadium, Lamport, so it's going back to York, and then Sunday back to Lamport. So a little bit odd, but what can you do? I'm still picking the Arrows comfortably in this one.
But Toronto fans have to be livid about this scheduling kerfuffle.
Yeah, hey, the Great White North, we take this in stride, do it with a smile on our face and say thank you, whatever happens. So, yeah, I'm sure the Arrows will be up for this one, no problems.
All right, let's get to the 3 matches on Saturday. First up, New Orleans hosting San Diego, a biggie.
Yeah, really looking forward to that one. To start things, a huge match on Saturday. NOLA, San Diego. What do you say? NOLA, I didn't think were firing on all their cylinders this past weekend, but I think they'll be up for the big game. Maybe Austin didn't quite test them enough, but this is going to be a good one. I'm leaning towards NOLA just because of that home field advantage, but this is a coin toss. For us experts in the pool, this is going to be a make or break one.
I'm going to go with San Diego again, but NOLA has proven me wrong over and over again, and they've proven a lot of people wrong this year. They are the real deal. But I think San Diego is going to be extra angry after letting an opportunity in Toronto slip away. They're not going to get 3 yellow cards again. They have Lou Stanfield coming back. He adds a big component to that team. I'm worried about Kyle Bailey's ankle. We're not sure how bad that injury is. So I'm going to go with San Diego, but I can definitely see NOLA winning that one.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't put anything past San Diego winning this. I mean, we saw in Toronto, all you need is just a shadow of a chance, and you get guys like Tio and Matthias running through gaps, and all of a sudden, it's the game can change on a dime. So, this is going to be a really close one. I'm not 100% certain of my NOLA pick, but I'm going to stick to them for this week, and fingers crossed.
Hey, picking the gold is not a bad pick. It's they're top of the table. They're there for a reason. But let's get to the next one. Rooney hosting the defending champion Seattle Seawolves.
Yeah, just to follow up, you got one, and this one's starting just an hour and a half later. What a great match this is going to be. And here's the big one for Seattle. Samu Manoa is expected to dress up for this one. He didn't play that one match against Toronto, thankfully. But I don't think New York is going to be spared. I think the big man's going to take the field. Oh boy, this is a tough one to pick. Again, you give home field advantage to New York, but that forward pack, Seattle just had a week off to recover. That forward pack is just menacing. So I'm going to lean towards Seattle. I know you're going to pick New York. I'm leaning towards the big man. I think Samu comes in and lays down some thunderous hits out there and makes enough of a difference to give him a squeaky win.
This is something that USA Rugby fans want to keep their eyes on, because this guy is a force of nature. And he's had time off, he's had time with family, he's had time to heal physically and mentally. If this guy gets back to anywhere near the form that he was at his prime, he is going to be a difference maker, not only for the Seawolves, but for the Eagles come the World Cup. So keep your eye on Samu. But with the travel, I'm banking on New York and New York's health. You've got Mr. 80 Minutes, James Rochford, in the front row, all the matches across the season, and that's just an incredible stat. Kudos to you, James.
Yeah, I'm massively looking forward to this one. So 2 big games back-to-back on Saturday, really toss-up selections. I'm leaning towards Seattle, but again, every chance that Rooney can roll up their sleeves and get this one done at home.
Okay, we've got the Sabercats. Doesn't get any easier. Raptors have bigger claws than Sabercats. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, Houston, they're heading back home to Aviva Stadium. Hopefully the grass is settled enough that they can have a proper scrum in this one. Watching that Glendale performance against Utah, you have to lean towards the Raptors. They're, just that experience. It seems like they're coming on at the right time, the business end of the season. So I'm going with Glendale on this one. Hopefully I haven't seen the weather reports or anything, but hopefully Houston can front up, make a game of this one. Certainly don't want to see them shut out with the kind of firepower they have in that back line. So I think they'll have a better show of this. They'll make it competitive, more competitive than the Utah match, I think. But I'm going to go with Glendale on the road over Houston.
Sabercats have a good vibe. They're playing tough. No discredit to them, nor their new coach, Paul Emmerich, but the Raptors are just primed for the playoffs and peaking, so I think they're going to run them out of the building. Okay, final match. Deja vu all over again as your Toronto Arrows take the pitch again in 1 week, this time hosting the Utah Warriors.
Yeah, and then back to the Wars again on Sunday for Toronto, their 3rd game in the span of 8 days a week, whatever you want to call it, and I still got to pick them to win. I think they have the squad depth to get through those 2 games. It's a big ask, but they know they've known about this game. They'll have this drawn out. They'll have a strategy as far as selection goes. They'll use their subs heavily in those games. So I think Utah will have a little bit more bite to them than the game in Glendale. So it'll be a challenge. I think they might be in it with maybe 20 minutes to go, but I think the Arrows will do enough and maybe pull away in the end to take that one for their 3rd win of the week.
I agree. It's going to be all Arrows, and as Dan Moore calls Toronto, the TO, not in reference to Terrell Owens, but into Toronto, TO. It's going to be tough sledding for the Warriors. Big win for the Arrows, and a big week for the Arrows. 3 wins. We are out of time, so final thoughts, my friend.
Said it before, say it again. The playoff run is so exciting to see these teams just neck and neck down the run. So huge weekend in Major League Rugby. Really looking forward to this one.
Good stuff. And before we let everybody go, look for Old Glory, the DC entry in Major League Rugby, kicking off their exhibition season May 19th. 4 matches in consecutive weeks. But on that note, we are out of time. So on behalf of Mr. Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News, I'm Matt McCarthy at the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle, on West 36th Street in New York City for Rugby Wrap-Up, signing off.